Hi there, welcome to some of the latest news in the Jay Slater case. Whilst it's still ongoing and there are creators out there looking at it from different angles, despite the family supposedly getting some form of closure, the family, such as Jay's mother, has also spoken out since in regard to calling out trolls, calling out others, and the push for this new law called Jay's Law. I believe it partially came up in that documentary which recently aired, I think on Channel 4, and now there's some recent news articles going on about it again, and Debbie Duncan has spoken out once again. But what does she have to say? What's her general outlook on the overall situation? See, with my perspective, whenever it comes to a true crime case, a missing person mystery case, or even a crossover, when it comes to the community online, there'll be a variety of people. The majority will be the audience and consumers. Then the minority will be the creators and influencers that cover these different cases. Some have it under control and others don't. And it creates a messy place and environment. So those on the outside, not familiar with these communities or environments, such as the victims' families who don't normally engage in this type of stuff, but when they do finally reach out for some form of help or support online, whilst you welcome the good, the bad comes along with it, just like in other areas in life. So it's about trying to get that balance and that understanding. But where is the balance at this moment? Is it too one-sided, too negative? So we're going to take a look at a couple of articles because it gives different points of views and quotes from Debbie, the mother herself. And we'll just see where things are at, and I can give you my raw analysis on the go. The first article is by BBC, 21st of November 2025, titled, "We've Been to Hell and Back with Online Trolls." See, the interesting dynamic with this is whilst the victims' families can be, facing trolls and conflict and resistance, you will also get content creators who try and keep the case alive and spread awareness that deal with trolls and attacks, if not more. I can go into that a bit later, but we need to focus on what's important here. So the mother of Jay Slater, who died after going missing, that's not exactly worded correct. The mother to Jay Slater, in which Jay Slater died after going missing in Tenerife last summer, should be worded better that way, has stepped up her campaign for a new law to tackle online trolls. Debbie Duncan from Oswestry in Lancashire is being backed by her local MP in calling for Jay's Law to prevent the online trolling of grieving families like hers. And I guess that's just more so specifically for the UK. As for cases that I've covered in the past, it's more so been in the US, but not really seen any laws come about for that in protection of others. The 19-year-old's disappearance sparked a massive manhunt, of course, after he attempted a 14-hour walk home the morning after a night out on the island from the Airbnb. In quotes, Debbie says, "I'd like to see the social media companies take away all the misinformation to protect families like ours, especially when there has been a massive story in the media," Miss Duncan said. How realistic and how possible is that? Because when it comes to social media companies that can make money and grow, and creators on those platforms that can grow too, like Twitter X, and you can gain engagement, gain views, likes, whether it's true information or not, the social media companies in the background can benefit secretly. Are they really going to be taking away all that misinformation, or will they likely do a half-hearted attempt? So it looks like on the surface level, they're caring, taking action, pleasing the victims' families, but they're still pocketing in some way in the background. Wouldn't be a surprise. But realistically, is it even possible to get rid of all that misinformation when it can spread like wildfire? Just like when it comes to certain photos and videos of stuff, how that can spread about. You think you've got it all taken down and removed, and then another one pops up, then another copy, a screenshot, an archive. It can go on and on. That's a photo of Jay's mother. Huge search was launched after Jay was reported missing, and it just goes in depth there. Inquest concluded his death from head injuries was an accident after he lost his footing and fell in a ravine from a cliff hill height. But some have said that he may have been pushed. In quotes, whilst we're still out there in Tenerife, the online world was just going crazy, Miss Duncan said. At the beginning, it was all positive, sharing the awareness that Jay was missing, asking for information, but then it just became absolutely ridiculous. See, the thing is, the reason why, for as long as a case goes on for, the longer it drags on, that's when it starts getting messy, because people start twiddling their thumbs. And if no more new information is coming out, or there's a breakdown in communication, sometimes the general public get restless, sometimes creators get restless too. They start trying to fill in the gaps and the blanks, try fill in the moments of silence with a possible understanding, a theory, an idea, but it's not always done with the correct wording, and it is a level of impatientness and urgency. People end up rushing and jumping to conclusions, and that's when it starts getting a bit messy. And if those those within the case, whether it be authorities, victims' families, maybe they shouldn't have to, if that's not kept under control, or there's not enough press conferences or press releases, media post out there officially confirming this or that, or debunking this and that, that's what can intensify the hunger and desire within just humans wanting answers. Are most humans deserving or entitled to those answers? Maybe not always, but you'll still have that raw natural instinct within people that just want more, and they want details, and when they don't get what they want, they'll take matters into their own hand, hence why it can go from positive to negative. Beside that, Debbie said, we were getting sent videos. They were sending photographs of photoshopped images of Jay making out he'd been tortured. It was just awful. I thought, how can people do this? It was sick. It's never stopped. So examples like that do seem rather unnecessary, because the person or people that likely did it in the first place, with it being photoshopped, they knew what they were doing and they were faking it. To what, convince the family that this is the outcome of Jay, or that they knew that the family weren't going to fall for it, but it was done as a means of psychological warfare and just pranking, but in a dark way, likely. See, I wonder where it comes in when it comes down to how Debbie said that she received that call or text about, you're never going to see your son again. It was like a threatening message. Was it on Snapchat or so? Or WhatsApp? But beside that, what do we have down below? Most painful thing. Miss Duncan said the family hoped a Channel 4 documentary about her son, the disappearance of Jay, would help a lot of people understand the truth and the facts. But the slight problem was it was quite short in length, the documentary. I think it could have gone in more depth, and it could have followed a better pattern, because it kept going all over the place, from Jay's past when he was young to the present time to the search. It wasn't in one sequence. It was like chopped up all over the place, a bit erratic, kind of hard to follow, and not all the details were mentioned. I don't think Mark William Thomas, that guy, that detective who came up with a lot of the dodginess and the dark underground world, linking it with Jay, wasn't really acknowledged either. So there was a lot of blank points. The documentary could have mentioned more about the rumours and the recklessness from others, and setting the record straight in the same process, besides just telling the supposed regurgitated facts, but also countering it against the fakeness. But it just felt a little bit empty at times. However, the conspiracy theories just carried on, Miss Duncan said. People are still going online, going down rabbit holes, she said. It's just unbelievable. Making out he was involved in some drug cartel. It's absolutely crazy. But I said, that Mark William Thomas guy, he was the one that kind of, I don't know if he exactly started it, but he was a part of it when he was suggesting that there could be some connections and networks which Jay's involved in, met with the wrong people, the wrong crowd, doing stuff for other people. Those constant news reports when he kept chipping in with those little videos and updates. So the general public would have listened to that and then maybe done their own research, or evolved from that and expanded on thoughts, and it's just kind of spiraled out of control. But, should it still be going on right now? Well, there's certain reasons as to why it can continue on, even if it's not needed, as in if people don't get the outcome that they want in the case. Even if the supposed truth was a certain way, if people didn't agree with it, they'll probably push and push, as it's mentioned here. In September, Miss Duncan launched an official parliamentary petition calling for Jay's law, which was backed by Sarah Smith, a local MP for Hydeburn and Haslingden. The two women are now working together to convene a cross-party meeting with MPs and ministers to discuss how Jay's law can be brought forward. We've been to hell and back, Miss Duncan said. It's one thing losing a son, it's the most painful thing, but then to listen to all that and see all that's going on in the background, that needs to be something that can stop it. There needs to be something. So, do we have any examples, additional stuff? Well, on The Independent, Jay Slater's mother demands new law, the subject of conspiracy theories after her son went missing in Tenerife. So this more says applying to what Debbie Duncan has gone through personally and how she's been linked with Jay's disappearance in some way. Did conspiracy theorists put the search for Jay Slater in jeopardy? I mean, depends how you look at it. You had volunteers, some that went out there. I think there may have been a TikToker, and whilst he was out there or got to the airport, he mentioned about he was receiving unwanted attention and threats online through messages, and it was putting him off. So whilst he was out there searching, he kind of cut back the time he spent out there because he feared for his life. So in terms of independent or volunteer searches, some were cut short because of the presence of darker forces online trying to derail search efforts. Is that because those that are derailing it are involved in Jay's disappearance and death, or they just want to see chaos and they don't want to see a positive resolve? It could be that. Scroll down just a little bit more. Starting here. Jay Slater's mother has stepped up a campaign. Got the backing as well. The Lancashire man had taken drugs and alcohol on a night out and attempted to make a 14-hour walk back. Yeah, we've seen all that. The inquest. Miss Duncan told The Mirror, I've been accused of all sorts. They say we knew why he was going to Tenerife and that he was going to get involved in selling drugs. And in quotes, that we covered up his murder, that it was all a setup and the GoFundMe was fake and he was going to reappear. Doing something like that wouldn't be easy to pull off whatsoever. You try and fake your death, then you got to go into hiding or move away for good, maybe change your identity and all that. Would you go to that length just for the GoFundMe? See, there are some, in some ways, valid observations in regard to the GoFundMe. Not all about a conspiracy of pretending Jay's dead to get money, but making the most of the GoFundMe, but maybe milking it a little bit too long. That when it did reach a certain goal, they carried it on. It kept on going. Sometimes, other times when it comes to GoFundMes, there's a certain target goal. And then once it reaches it, then either the campaign, the whatever, stops or it's taken down because it's been successful. In this case, it just continued on. And then I think there was suggestions of, when it came to the funeral, doing another GoFundMe for that. And it's how much more money does one need when beside money, there are other important stuff going on, as in losing someone you know and love. So people online were a bit sceptical of the GoFundMe, and there have been times in true crime and missing person cases where there's been GoFundMe scams by some of the supposed victim families, so you can understand the skepticism and trust issues there in general in life. Other times you get second-hand third-party GoFundMes who are acting or pretending to do it on behalf of the victim's family, and then the family say there shouldn't be any GoFundMes out there, or if there's any other ones out there, they're not official and they're fake. That's what happened, I believe, in the Dylan Rounds case in the US, losing Utah. So beside that, in quotes, Debbie said, one content creator even said, how do you know it's Jay that was in the coffin? He needs digging up. How weird. If that's the content creator suggesting that, depending on how Jay was found at the time and trying to identify the body, if possible or not, how do you know it's really him? But don't you just do it like a dental record and stuff? In quotes, it hurts they don't know our family or anything about us, but they're allowed to say what they want. The thing is, when it comes to online, it can unfortunately be a free-for-all where there might not be enough consequences, so it will encourage a variety of behaviour and some revealing their true colours and being able to say what they like without much punishment, whereas maybe face-to-face in real life, it's not so much the same. But, it depends how language and wording is used. You could say a lot. You could make a lot of observations and they might not be positive. But as long as you just based it on an opinion with no facts, or not stating it's a fact, and there's no hard evidence, it's just words, that's it. It can still be hurtful, it can still be painful, of course. But if you use the correct language and wording, in some ways you're not really breaking any laws there. So she's calling for a new law to better regulate social media. But it can go from one extreme to another. It could be uncontrolled, unmonitored, free-for-all, reckless, and can impact people, but then it can become very controlled, and then what can you say and what can't you say? There's a balance that needs to be in place, and is that even possible? Miss Duncan added, in quotes, "The people who do this hide behind screens, but what they say has real consequences for real families. I'm campaigning for Jay's law because something has to change. Families should be allowed to grieve in peace without being dragged through more pain." But it's one of those things, if you specifically reach out to online forums and pages, social media, you should, if you already know that social media can be toxic and can be bad, unfortunately you have to brace yourself for exposure to that along with the good that follows. It goes hand in hand, it's just how it is. In September, Miss Duncan launched the petition, seen it, and Labour MP Miss Biff said, "We can't keep allowing grieving families to become targets for abuse and lies every time a tragedy happens. The campaign comes as the Channel 4 documentary examines the problem of tragedy trolling." So whilst Debbie Duncan is referring to the typical line of people behind a screen, people behind a keyboard, supposed keyboard warriors and all this and that, where people can be whoever they want, do whatever they want without much fear of consequences, thus reinforcing that toxic behaviour and those certain negative traits within humans. The only positive about all that is you see people for what they really are. Because when it comes to face in real life, if most people are too cowardly to show their true side as they would online, well, you're not going to see it firsthand until maybe when it's too late, until maybe it's behind closed doors. So sometimes it's best to get through the negativity early on, and then you know who you're dealing with and what. But understandably, when it does come to people masking their identities or under different accounts, default profiles, it's hard to try and figure out who is who. But you will get content creators and influencers, which can be pivotal, areas in cases, communities online, because they also have an audience. So what they say and what they do, the audience may follow. So with a certain form of power comes a level of responsibility. And if known individuals, influencers and creators are engaging in cases like the Jay Slater one, and if they say outlandish, crazy stuff, but the general public audience agrees and follows along with it, it will spiral, it will spread like a fire, and it's hard to contain and control. But let's not forget, besides behind a keyboard, people always like to bash online, but just remember a lot of good can come from online too. The only reason why GoFundMe exist is because of online. The only reason why campaigns can be successful and awareness is spread and with cases and money generated is because of online, because of social networking, because of cross connections, because online is a big open space and you can reach out to people you normally wouldn't be able to in real life because of distance, because of time and certain levels of communication. So the reach, how extended it can be, with the bad can come the good and vice versa. And furthermore, whilst people like to bash online for negative behaviour, what about people behind a steering wheel in a car? Oh, why is there such things like road rage and people getting all angry and aggressive regardless of gender, behind the wheel, beeping their horns as they pass by in a cowardly fashion, whining and swearing, and whether that be towards other drivers or pedestrians, that can happen, is because people are in an enclosed space behind something. Just like how people are behind a keyboard, people are behind a steering wheel, behind a form of power, behind a form of a physical or digital shield, which they think protects them so they feel safe. And if they feel safe and if there's less consequence, they're more likely, more reinforced to show their true self and release a darker side of them without fear of consequence, or at least in the moment so they think. Just like people that hide behind an aggressive looking dog or an actual aggressive, vicious dog. You look all big and strong just because you're behind holding a lead, while something else does the damage or has a certain presence about it. It can happen in real life, it can happen online. A certain environment, a certain condition which makes you feel safe, maybe a little too safe, so it reveals your inner dark side. That's just how humans are. Not everybody's like that, because some people actually have standards, but it might be hard to come by nowadays. But referring back to the Jay Slater case and how people go about it and had done previously, I remember people covering it online, and they were suggesting and saying how, awareness needs to be spread, but also trying to work out the unsolved and unanswered questions and some of the contradictions along the way and how certain stuff doesn't make sense. But then there'll be some crossovers with maybe smaller channels and just people in general online that were sharing, reposting, resharing videos of the area, a party down a road, saying, oh, look, there's Jay Slater getting into a fight with some other people. Oh, there's someone with a knife attacking Jay Slater. Oh, there's Jay Slater going down a rural road after either being picked up or getting out of the car and then walking off. And was any of it to do with Jay? Supposedly not. But, when it's looking at a distance and there's not much context and it's the only stuff you're working with at the time, a level of desperation and grasping onto anything that could be out there, then a level of desperation and hope in believing that it's the truth because people want closure, sometimes maybe more badly than the family, to the point where they will cross over the boundary. Look, I know a bit about this because when I was covering the Noah Presgrove true crime case at US Oklahoma Terrell, there was moments online social media where people were barking and shouting with capital letters claiming, here's party footage. Yes, it was footage of a party at night in the US, maybe Oklahoma too. And it showed males and it showed a person in a fight getting attacked. And it was being claimed that there's Noah Presgrove, there's the proof that he was attacked, he was in a fight, and he ended up dying possibly. Was that footage relevant to Noah's case? No, it was outdated by 3 years old. Were the actual people related to Noah friends identifiable? No, it was strangers. But some people either accidentally made the assumption that it was related to the case, or some knew what they were doing and they created disinformation to purposely harm the case and to pull the wool over people's eyes to cause confusion, a form of misdirection. And because other people want answers or some kind of something, because there's great levels of silence, and some people are overly emotionally charged, that they'll believe in anything. Yes men, yes women. They go along with it, they believe in it, and then it spreads and spreads and strengthens the lie, turning into, it's like a fact masked. And underneath, it's basically a lie or a mistake. And it can cause damage down the line. It can cause trust issues, confusion, and where do you go from there? What direction do you go in next? It creates a great level of uncertainty. See, at the end of the day, could the case have been handled and dealt with any better? As for the online aspect, I don't think Mark William Thomas gets acknowledged enough, as in he kind of, to some extent, was a bit of an enabling factor to opening up of the criminal networks, the theories or the conspiracies with Jay there, and how the general public got attached to it too. That should be acknowledged. That article, what we saw, it mentioned about, I think, the Madeleine McCann case too, how that received trolls and continues to do so. Well, Mark William Thomas had followed that as well, so I don't know if there's a bit of a pattern there, or it's just a coincidence. But to be honest, at the end of the day, really anything online, there'll be positive, there'll be negative. At a time of when there's a tragedy or a bad event, you'd hope that it's all positive and supportive, but it will never be that way. It just won't. Maybe some people in a dark way could argue with a bit of a fair point and say, if everybody was the same and acted the same, then the world would be a boring place. There's debates for and against that. At the end of the day, what's done has been done, but will this Jay's law change anything, and will it actually happen and come into place? Me personally, my prediction is, we're talking about the UK specifically, there might be more attempts and efforts made there, but at the end of the day, when it comes to social media and when it comes to people abroad and in other countries, maybe accessing and using certain material and sharing and reposting, even if it was all supposedly wiped, the misinformation, the false claims, and even videos which may have been posted or reshared onto these platforms by other creators, part of the problem or indirectly part of it, that I'm sure there'll be backups, there'll be archives, people would have downloaded it, preserved it, and then it'll just spread like wildfire again. Look, at the end of the day, even if there's been an inquest and there's been some kind of closure and an outcome explanation, when people don't get the outcome that they want, not the family, but just random people online, they're not going to settle and agree and accept it. Instead, they could either throw the toys out the pram, have a tantrum and push on with what they believe, or they don't have a tantrum, but they just feel even more committed and motivated to trying to uncover the supposed secret truth, because their truth hasn't come about or been acknowledged, and it's there, but it's not always really there, but they think it is. You do get some exceptions with cases out there where, it's reached a conclusion, but it's not the actual truth. And the real truth is hidden behind something else. So people may use that or examples of other cases and then apply it to Jay Slater. I mean, to be honest with you, I've not followed this case closely, so I'm not going to know all the ins and outs. But like with other cases that I've covered, there are some unanswered areas, grey areas, especially if there's contradictions and levels of hypocrisy, then it does need to be looked into. Even the smallest of events, smallest of details can be such a big critical thing, because if there's many of them, it can snowball effect into one big event. I mean, we talk about trolls and online behaviour like that. Well, what about just the message that Debbie received when arriving out there abroad, when trying to locate her son, when it mentioned by an unknown person that you're never going to see your son again, he owes us, or he's in trouble. Was that a prank gone wrong? Or was it done to cause harm, intimidate? Was it a genuine threat? Is it linked to Jay's outcome? Never seemed to reach a resolution there. So when things remain a bit of a mystery, it will encourage people in the community online to maybe push harder in those areas to say, well, if that's not been resolved or sorted, then maybe there is still more going on in the background, underground, whether the family are aware or not. I've seen it happen with other cases out there. The Dylan Rounds one, how that was resolved and came to a head, made sense. But there was still some people that were pushing it in other unnatural ways, which was reckless, but they were like that from the start in the case community, so nothing changed there. Some people online are just problematic. Others, though, may have a genuine reason as to what they may think, but it all comes down to language, wording, communication. You don't always get that. It might differ from platform to platform, I don't know which one's more prevalent with Jay Slater, TikTok or YouTube. It might be 50-50, but you got creators on each page with different audiences and following. One thing that I know, though, is that even post-case, post-closure, and I've done my analysis within reason, and I received resistance from impetuous humans that don't understand the importance behind some of the elements and themes, and that says a lot. Just like how people try and mask and justify and cover up Jay's dark past, birds of a feather flocking together, associating with dark forces, and how that could link over to if there was history repeating itself when Jay was around the wrong crowd of people when abroad. That's the only observation that I was making, and people didn't even bother watching to that point and started complaining early on, saying, oh, why are you going on about this? Why you keep going on about it? I've only made a couple of videos, so you need to simmer down and just check. So, yeah. They're the type of humans that I've dealt with. Are they trolls? No. Are they somewhat normal people? Yeah. But are they problematic? Yeah. Normal people can be just as problematic as trolls. It all comes down to what's the motive at the end of the day. You come across bad people, if they've got a clear motive and they're not trying to hide or fake it, then it is what it is. At least you know what you're dealing with. It's the nice people or the normal people, could even be the majority at times, where you think, oh, it's all fine and okay, or is it not? You don't know where you stand with people, and that uncertainty, a bit deafening at times. As with what the family have gone through when, false claims, serious claims have been made, that won't do much good. It's reckless by people. It could give ammunition to the victim's family to push back against others. And, when some people mess up the minority, like with these laws and changes made for the right reasons or wrong, if it's too drastic to change, the minority's behaviour can lead to the majority or the rest of people online maybe feeling the consequences and the side effects from some that were a bit reckless. Just like how you could have a classroom, one person messes up, and then the whole class is punished for that one person's mistakes or recklessness. It can have a chain reaction. So ultimately, we'll see what happens, but as much as people like to go on and talk about the case, so are the victim's family and people in between. So it's going both ways in parallel to one another. You let me know, though, your thoughts below as to whether you agree or not with Jay's law. Leave a comment if you want to share the video, that'd be appreciated. My name's White Ref. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Good night for now.